Swerve Strickland has decided to keep his business with Prince Nana. What are the repercussions with MVP and the Hurt Syndicate? We're going to talk about it in just a second, so stay tuned. This is WrstlXtra.
Yo, this is WrstlXtra. I'm your boy, A Dazzle, the Black Wrestling Advocate, always joined by my trios team, the Real House of Black, Mex, the WrestleManiac, if you will, Yeet, and of course, the omnipresent man. Say his name, he will appear. The man is Gerard Bonner. Family over business. Interesting as Swerve rejects the advances of MVP and the Hurt Syndicate and Shelton Benjamin gets in his face. It is interesting. It is exciting. Gerard, I'm gonna come to you first. With the way it all went down at Wrestle Dream in Tacoma, Washington, the hometown of Swerve, of course. What did you make of the whole situation? The whole interaction between all four men?
I found it somewhat surprising. I think just based on what we have seen of Swerve over the years, it's usually been business over family as opposed to family over business. So this is a shocking turn. And maybe this is, the solidifying of, Swerve as a face and as a nice guy. I'm shocked by this. I don't know if this is the end of the story. And what I mean by the end of the story is I think by the time it's over, he will change his tune or change his family. I think it'll go one of those two ways. I still don't see by the end of this whole interaction, him and Nana still being together. I think the Hurt Syndicate might beat it into Swerve and convince Swerve otherwise, but I don't think that's the last of it. But I'll tell you, for those who are into the whole, it's an honorable kind of thing. It is honorable for him to choose Nana at this point. How beneficial it will be, time will soon tell.
Interesting. I believe as the interaction was happening, many were expecting, the appearance of Bobby Lashley, of course. But I've seen over the last few hours, probably over the last 2 days, maybe, that there was some talk and possible plan of Bobby Lashley appearing in that segment. One of the reasons why it didn't happen, I guess the main reason why it didn't happen, according to reports, of course, is because obviously we saw defeat and beatdown of Bryan Danielson in the main event. Danielson, of course, another Washington guy, and apparently AEW didn't want two Washington guys being beaten down during a show in Washington, of course. So it seems inevitable. Bobby Lashley is going to make some sort of appearance very, very soon. We see, as we saw, as I said, Shelton Benjamin got in the face of Swerve. Swerve is ready to face Benjamin, but we also know that Benjamin is facing Lio Rush. Does Bobby Lashley show up in that space? We know that there's a history between Rush and Lashley. Will that have anything to do with anything? Mex, what are your thoughts?
I did like the fact that they kind of held off on Bobby Lashley. That we already saw on the pay-per-view Adam Cole return, MJF, if you want to count MJF, even Daniel Garcia, all in the same segment. They all made somewhat of a return. Then we obviously had big angles. We had turns in behavior from like Carl Fletcher. So there was a lot happening, and this it could have been made akin to like the All Out of 2021 when we got the debuts of Danielson and Adam Cole and stuff. But I just don't feel like the company are there, in the same positioning as they were then. So it come off as, oh wow, look at all this stuff that happened at this one pay-per-view. So it was good they held back on it, and I feel like they should tell this story slowly to an extent. Have, you know, what is it, the head of complaints, Shelton Benjamin, eventually get his hands on Swerve and stuff like that. Maybe even MVP tries to get his hands on Swerve and do something. Yeah, until you bring in Bobby Lashley. And I say this respectfully, but you know, with a hint of my sarcasm as always. MVP has made a lot of noise about, you know, WWE are foolish, how they didn't use Lashley. They could have been, you know, the black Brock Lesnar and all this kind of stuff. So ultimately, at this point, because they can't convince Swerve to join them, I want to see Lashley be brought in as this so-called black Brock Lesnar. No nonsense, and literally, you know, AEW been giving us a lot of sinister scenes recently in terms of their pay-per-views, especially. This should probably be one of them. Like, they have to beat Swerve black and blue to kind of, you know, this is a mistake you're making, sort of thing. And it happens at the hands of Bobby Lashley for me. Let's position him and get him in the minds of people as, oh my God, he is this guy, sort of thing. You know, I think that's what we need to do. With the Lio Rush thing is an interesting, you know, tidbit, because obviously Lio Rush seemingly just signed a new contract with the company and stuff. So that's good for him. But yeah, there's history there with Bobby Lashley. He could be someone that they see some level of stock in as well and put him with the Hurt Syndicate. I think at this point it's probably just a match. But I do think there is something in Lio Rush possibly linking up with these guys as well in some way, shape, or form.
Interesting. With all the interactions that MVP has had with people backstage, Lio Rush seemed to be the only one where he wasn't trying to convince him of anything at all. So maybe it could lead to something like that. Maybe it isn't. But it's nice to see, for me, just the amount of interaction. It's kind of what we mentioned last week about, you know, MVP having numerous interactions with different people and then kind of seeing who joins him and who doesn't. Adding Lio Rush to that list is very interesting. He was one of those guys that I kind of predicted could possibly join the group, but with his current affiliation with Top Flight and the rest, does he go that way? Does he need to? What then happens to Top Flight and the rest of them if he does? I almost feel as though Lio Rush seems to be the only thing that keeps them relevant at the moment. As great talents as they all are, they just seem to kind of, be missed, in the mix at the moment. As much as we're seeing them on TV, they're not really doing much. They were there in the background during the tag team match at Wrestle Dream. For what reason, I don't completely know, because they didn't get involved. They weren't really, I don't know what they were there for. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens in terms of dynamic with Lio Rush and the rest of that Top Flight crew. I'm also seeing this match with Shelton Benjamin as just a match. Of course, it's going to be Shelton Benjamin's debut match in AEW. So that makes it exciting, of course. There was something interesting that I saw. I think it was on Busted Open Radio with Bully Ray and Mark Henry. And one of them was alluding to seeing this more aggressive Shelton Benjamin. You know, his voice was much deeper. He looked a lot more serious than we've ever seen him before. Even in the Hurt Business, we were like, oh, this is a serious guy. But this one that we saw, at Wrestle Dream, I'm like, oh, it's almost like he's now a grown man. We know he's older than most, and he's more experienced than most people that we see in the ring on week to week now. But it's almost like he's leveled up or grown up even more now. Do you think that is something that we can see over time? Like, are we going to see a development of a more angry, serious Shelton Benjamin, or should it be something that just happens off the bat when he has his debut match on Wednesday?
I think it's a necessary part of the equation. It's part of the evolution of Shelton Benjamin. I was thinking about it. One of the reasons that many may not have seen this aggressive side of him is because, you know, for most of his tenure, he was in the WWE. And when he came in, he was young Shelton Benjamin, you know, part of Team Angle. And then if you think of most of the times he was presented, he was never presented as an angry, aggressive person. He was always presented as a great wrestler, the gold standard, you know, a hint of being comical, you know, Mama Benjamin, all of those kinds of things, but never. I mean, even in the Hurt business, he was more of the guy taking care of Cedric Alexander than he was the serious, no nonsense, mess around and find out kind of guy. That's who we got at Wrestle Dream. And if that's what we're getting, then people are going to have to pay attention to more than Bobby Lashley. They're going to have to pay attention to this entire conglomerate. That, I think, is going to be interesting. And I think it's necessary because, you know, you kind of have to be able to say, hey, if this other company didn't use me well, I need to show them the fullness of who I can be. And that's the side of Shelton Benjamin that we've yet to see.
You know, we talked in length last week about the presentation of Ricochet in AEW since his move over the last few weeks, and the need for us to see something very different, the need for us to see a different guy that we saw in WWE based on the reasons we assume he moved to AEW. We're in a very, very similar position with MVP and Shelton Benjamin. We've just mentioned about, you know, Bobby Lashley as well, hopefully being presented in a very different way. Mex, how necessary is it that we see that with this group? Do they have to be completely different to what we saw? Or could they be similar to what the Hurt Business was and still make waves in AEW?
I think they have the benefit of, as an act, they haven't been on our TVs for years at this point.
Right.
True.
Right.
So Ricochet was literally on our TV, contracts ran out, he walked into the next place, bar a couple of months here and there off TV. That's why it's very much like this is the same guy. And if we weren't enjoying it over there, you know, don't give me it here sort of thing. We saw Cody Rhodes obviously basically pick up his AEW character and drop it in WWE. But with the production and everything, and they, with obviously the money that would have been given to Cody for his contract, this was a top guy when he came in. So they have the benefit of they haven't been on our screens for, the best part of, 2 years or so, maybe, as a unit like this. So they can come back as is, obviously with a few change of personnel because Cedric Alexander's not around and stuff. But you know, you always want to evolve what you have done in the past, especially because even in WWE, this Hurt Business wasn't like a new concept. This has come from TNA as well. So I think most importantly, seeing kind of MVP have a bit more freedom in his promos, I've really enjoyed. I've seen the aggressive side of Shelton Benjamin. Like, Shelton Benjamin hasn't ever really portrayed that guy. Heel characters, yes, but not like what we're seeing now, which is like a more a wily, more experienced, stoic kind of person. I want him to really beat down Leo Rush tomorrow night. Like, you know, maybe even leave the flamboyant moves to one side and just give him a good old kind of pasting sort of thing. Like, I guess ahead of complaints would. So I think there's an element of developing because you always want to evolve. But they're definitely going to benefit from the fact that, you know, this is kind of like a new act again for them.
Yeah,
the other,
for sure.
let me mention this too, which I think is another important piece, and we were reminded of this. Max, you'll remember this at Wale Mania when Shelton Benjamin reminded us that at Wale Mania was the first time in history that the Hurt Business had been in front of people as a collective which is unbelievable when you think about it. So that means pretty much whatever they're about to present is going to be different because they never presented it in front of people before. So now you get potentially feeding off of what people say and don't say, interacting with that, taking that energy, and then seeing how it would be received in front of people. So whatever they do is about to be different. I think, though, it's going to be aggressive in a land that allows aggression, in a land that allows them to be edgy. We could be in for some really fun days.
Do you think that will actually make much difference, though, in terms of, you know, them being presented in front of people? You know, because obviously we had this whole thing with Drew McIntyre, who was the WWE champion during that whole pandemic era, didn't win it in front of people, so was on this, you know, on this quest to win the championship in front of people. Eventually did it. It got a good reception, thankfully, based on good storyline, as well as the fact that it was in front of people. Do you think it will make much difference? Do you think it's something that the fans think about in terms of seeing the Hurt Business or the Hurt Syndicate now in their faces and physically in front of them?
As in, do people like, are they clamoring for it? You mean?
Yeah, are they actually thinking about that? Are they actually thinking, oh, I love the Hurt Business, but I never actually saw them in front of me. Are they thinking about that?
I don't know if that's a good question, because it's like, I feel like at the time they were so impactful that we didn't mind just watching them from home, sort of thing.
Right.
So really and truly, yeah, it should be all the better now that there's going to be a level of, you know, crowd and stuff like that. And, you know, I always remember like their kind of standout moment was when Retribution, where was it doing all the kind of stuff around the ring, and these were bad guys that came out and just thought, like, enough is enough. They just offed their blazers and just got to work. 4 of them against the whole tribe of guys in balaclavas. And, you know, it's like they were no nonsense then. And if they can bring that feeling of the minute MVP steps out with his 2 or 3 goons, whoever they may be, like, oh my God, we're in trouble. It's almost like the bully has come to collect everyone's pocket money, sort of thing, in the playground. Right. Like you want that kind of aura, like, which is a word that's thrown around so much in wrestling these days. But you just want that kind of, the atmosphere is going to change because these guys are here now. It's like, oh my God, the Hurt Syndicate are here. We're all going to get beaten up now, sort of thing. So I would like to think the live crowd are gonna really love them, sort of thing. And then the next problem is, how long can they stay heel if the live crowd loves them, sort of thing. So yeah.
True. You know, we've now seen the interaction with Swerve, him making the decision to stick with Nia. Does Swerve have to join the Hurt Syndicate eventually? Does it have to happen? It would be brilliant aesthetically. All the rest of it would be phenomenal. But is Swerve really in a position where he has to have a group behind him? Could it not add to the Hurt Syndicate that this former world champion, who has kind of made it on his own and is as big as he is and has now recently signed a lucrative contract and blah, 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 would it benefit them more for Swerve to be their adversary for, you know, the next year maybe, or however long it is, as opposed to him joining them within a few months after being beaten down and convinced or persuaded or, you know, forced into the group?
I think obviously he's going to be their opposition for a while, but I do think eventually he joins them, and I don't think it hurts them, because what ends up happening is, remember, there's the Elite to beat up, there's the Blackpool Combat Club, there's a whole bunch of people that can catch this work. And I think that with a Swerve on their side, Swerve will certainly benefit, but I think they're going to also show how aggressive they are. Because here's the thing, Swerve's going to need some people to fight them. And I don't know who he's going to grab. I mean, you could grab Ricochet, since Ricochet wouldn't join them in WWE, and Ricochet's probably going to need something else to occupy his time. So that could be a possibility. Who else? I don't know, because Swerve has made so many enemies in AEW that I don't know how many people are coming to his rescue. So this will be interesting to see how it all plays out. But I think, they'll see over the next, I think, 5 to 6 months, if it goes that long, just how it is and what business looks like with them versus Swerve. And that'll really be able to tell if they're better together or apart.
Makes a difference.
I would say, yeah, there might actually. So after, especially the verbiage that we got for the pay-per-view, it looked like Swerve analyzed the whole situation, the pros and cons, relationship with MVP, relationship with Nana, acknowledged Nana's shortcomings, and said, "But you are family." I can't necessarily see it. It would be very Swerve to still do the turn, but I can't necessarily see it after that verbiage. We'll have to see where things develop before maybe that pops up again. But I think after obviously beating him down, like I'm saying, they need to beat him down. It could be more impressive if they then take, say, a Bobby Lashley and get him to the world title to then show to Swerve, this is what you're missing. It could be even more impressive if they took a Will Hobbs and got him to the world title. And it's like, look, you see what I mean? Like, this is what we can deliver here, sort of thing, what you're missing out on. And Swerve continues maybe to fail with Nana, whilst these other guys are coming through this system in the Hurt Syndicate and winning, whether it be international titles, continental titles, or the world title, whatever. So yeah, I don't mind him rejecting them and staying away from them as long as they prove him wrong. Down is one thing, but then prove him wrong, that you can actually do the championship thing in AEW as well.
Yeah, I think for me, in after the interaction that we had at WrestleDream, I think it's more important that it's not necessarily they force him into the group, but it's either a situation where, as you said, Max, they show him what they can do, or what he can achieve with them, or it's a situation where somehow at some point, Swerve comes against the Elite, and there's 4 against 1, and then he's got no other choice but to choose those guys, or they're the only ones that he can choose to fight his corner, and then he gets with them type of situation. The whole forced thing kind of, not say it doesn't work, but it's been done so many times. I'd want to see it done in a different way. And I just can't imagine how the forced way of doing it would make much sense. But we'll see. There are many ways it can go, many avenues it can take. And it's going to be interesting to see whether there will be some kind of interaction or interference from Swerve or with Swerve when Shelton has his match on Wednesday, whether there's something before or after or during the match. It's going to be interesting to see just how it kind of all plays out and how Bobby Lashley turns up as well. I think that's the one thing I'm more intrigued by, and maybe possibly worried by in terms of how it's done, and the reason why, and how that would play out. But it's gonna be interesting. Another thing that happened at WrestleDream, we mentioned his name already. Ricochet was in the triple threat match with Takeshita and Will Ospreay, of course. Takeshita coming out as the international champion. Phenomenal match, great match. Based on the outcome, this is just a wild question. Was there a real point in Ricochet being there?
I mean, I would say he was obviously part of the feud. Takeshita's the one that kind of butt his head into the feud, and then has obviously taken the title. I mean, in the end, he didn't even play into the finish, did he? Nope. It's not like they pinned him or anything like that, which I guess could be seen as a positive to take from the situation. But I don't know, man. I don't want to seem like I'm being harsh with Ricochet. This isn't Ricochet Extra, and every week I come here and talk about Ricochet. I just don't see why. I'm not seeing anything make sense right now. Nothing at all. And right, he didn't get pinned here, fair enough. But then obviously Ospreay is probably going to do some more work with Takeshita going forward. I expect this to be Takeshita's real ascent now into some brilliant things towards the end of the year. I don't know where this leaves Ricochet and stuff. He's going to go back to Dynamite. He's going to have some more matches. We got Full Gear sometime in November. Is he going to make the pay-per-view? I don't know. I just don't know. Look at what's this guy's name? Hologram. Hologram, yeah, isn't doing much. He's just having consistent great matches, right? And you've seen him progress from like 10, 11, 12 matches on Collision to a match on Dynamite, a win on pay-per-view. These are like 13, 14 straight wins. And like, I don't know what they're doing with Hologram either.
Right.
But it seems a lot more promising. Yeah, and this is what the majority of people said when you come into AEW as a Ricochet, and an older version of who everyone thought, or who you once was and stuff, and everyone adored. Now you're competing with what is the norm. Like in AEW, this is no longer special. There were some incredible spots still in that match they had on pay-per-view, but the long and short is I don't know. I just don't know what's happening anymore.
Gerard?
Yeah, maybe there's room for him in the Continental Classic at the end of the year. Maybe he can be involved in that tournament. But I said this from the second he said he was going to AEW. He now is not one of one anymore. He is one of many. And, to think that you could mention him and Dante and Darius Martin in the same sentence and pretty much get the same results is nuts. It's crazy. But, you're right. That Hologram Morto situation, what they've built for Hologram is far better than what they've built for Ricochet. And we didn't know Hologram from, dry paint on the wall before a couple of weeks ago. And now they've put more stock in him than they have Ricochet. So, I mean, we got the Ricochet Ospreay match, which was way too soon. That didn't come to a conclusive ending. Now you put them in a pay-per-view match with Takeshita and neither of them win. What did we do all that for? I actually wonder what Ricochet is sitting at home thinking of. When he goes home to Samantha and they compare weeks. Samantha talked about how, I just announced Gunther and Cody Rhodes and I announced Bad Blood and, all this. And what'd you do, honey? Well, I lost twice.
But I had fun doing it.
And here's what's even funnier. Samantha can say, well, did you see that post that Justin Roberts did? That was such a nice post that he did about me. Nobody from WWE is going, hey, we're so proud of Ricochet. He's killing it over in AEW right now.
Sure.
Said nobody. Ospreay's not even saying that. So he's going to need to do something very, very fast before this just is like, at this rate, there's no way you can talk about him making the next pay-per-view. I don't see him making it to All In Texas, which is where him and Ospreay really should have had their first match in the stadium. I don't see it.
They can find a way to put him on pay-per-view if they want to, sidestep the current WWE allegations of not having enough black males on pay-per-view. Ultimately, even the Beast Motors versus what's his face Hologram didn't need to be on pay-per-view. They found a space for it. Like AEW are class acts. They're world class when it comes to booking matches on pay-per-view that could easily be Dynamite main events and giving us 10, 11 matches on the pay-per-view card. Like they can find somewhere for him, but is it meaningful? Does it justify leaving WWE? are you doing anything different to what you were doing in WWE? Is your presentation different? You've just literally found another place to work, which is fine if that's what you want. But ultimately, bro, I want more for you. Even if you don't want more for yourself, I want more for you. And I just don't feel like we're getting that.
Right. I mean, for me, if anything, now that Fletcher has turned on Ospreay, you've now got Takeshita and Fletcher. Ricochet becomes, a tag team partner with Ospreay to battle those guys. That's where he can find his relevance for the next few weeks, maybe. But apart from that, yeah, I'm really struggling to find out where it goes from here. And the craziest thing is two things that I realized. We mentioned hologram so many times just now. When the vignettes for holograms started, everyone was questioning whether it was Ricochet, first of all.
Right.
And then the second thing, even with that match on WrestleDream, I believe there was one of the biggest reasons why the match happened on WrestleDream was something to do with AEW being shown, or an AEW pay-per-view being shown on, was it Fox Mexico? For the first time? Because that was mentioned like about 10 times during the match.
Right.
They even showed the Spanish announce team before that match as well. So that's probably another reason why, that was, I'm sure that was the main reason why that match was on that show. And yeah, even with hologram having so many matches and doing, never losing, it feels like it's not necessarily going anywhere. So I'm not, I just don't, this whole thing is just perplexing, and I don't know what's happening. But I guess this whole week to week booking of Tony Khan is taking effect on a lot more people than just Ricochet and hologram. But time will tell, and we'll see what happens. One thing we didn't see enough of that has been talked about since WrestleDream is women's wrestling on AEW. Seems to have been, talking point for the last 5 years. AEW's been around for 5 years. But anyway, we only had one match. Mariah May defeated Willow Nightingale. But we do know that Mercedes Moné will take on Queen Aminata on Wednesday. Gerard, why was that match not at WrestleDream, and does it benefit anyone it being on Dynamite?
It's a great question in terms of why it wasn't on WrestleDream. I mean, they both were there. That's where the interaction happened, which is wild to me that you're a TBS champion, you're a highest paid woman in pro wrestling, is in the building, and you've not scheduled a match for her on a pay-per-view. Wild to me. Even wilder that was the interaction that caused the match between these two. That's wild. Now, in terms of, this concept of WrestleDream, dream matches, etc., Aminata, Mercedes Moné, dream match. WrestleDream, the right place for it. The setup, horrible. Relegating it to Dynamite doesn't make much sense. But I guess we get the match, and I guess we should be happy. I'm happy for Aminata, obviously. Her getting this opportunity on Dynamite against a major player like Mercedes is a big deal. I think it would have been a bigger deal had they set this up and put this on the pay-per-view, because, again, just a random setup during your 0 hour leading to a Dynamite match just isn't making sense.
We even talked about it last week where, for the last 2 or 3 weeks, Mercedes has been backstage doing promos that didn't mean nothing to nobody, talking about herself, a great vignette, blah, blah, blah. They could have used those couple of weeks to promote this and have this interaction 3 weeks ago, and then we get a match at WrestleDream. Mex, what's going on?
I don't know.
Simple.
Like, I don't know. It's I'm just perplexed. I think it was last week we were talking about was it Ringside News that said that right now the math isn't mathing for what they're paying her and what she has done business wise for them. To see her just not on the on the pay-per-view called Wrestle Dream. You could have brought, even if you don't believe in anyone in your roster, go and bring someone from Japan. Like, I don't understand how you missed this opportunity. And it's only when people really started saying, oh, there's only one women's match on the card, I started thinking, okay, that's going to be the world title. Where's the TBS title?
Right.
TBS title isn't on the card. Like, it's not just anyone holding it, it's Mercedes. So yeah, that is very kind of jaw-dropping stuff. And Statlander is obviously right now in a roundabout way trying to get to Mercedes through Camille first. But to be honest, I only care about Statlander versus Camille because I want to see those two collide. Like, I just don't know. Neither do I care for anything she's involved in right now. Like you said, Gerard, and we were saying, I think in the group, like, great for Aminata, deserves it. I feel they're going to put in a really good match. It's going to be a great showing. But I just don't know why, like, creatively, it just doesn't seem to be clicking with Mercedes right now in terms of whether what she's being given or where she is. I don't know. I have no idea. And, you know, some people would have said that the way to fix this is, like, let her drop the TBS title and go after the world title and be the world champion for a bit. But this should be evidence to build that case. We shouldn't just be giving her the world title. If she has a good TBS run, it's like, okay, no, I want to see her as world champion. But the evidence isn't there right now. Yeah, so yeah.
I think the main issue with this whole equation is more so not just any female being used in this way, but it's the whole fact of it being Mercedes, it being the fact that she's got this massive contract and has the history that she has and the stardom that she has and all the rest of it. For me, if I'm thinking about, you know, where these matches are being positioned and whatnot, I'm not really too fussed about having the championship being defended on Dynamite as opposed to it being on pay-per-view, because even when it was Gunther versus Sami Zayn and that didn't happen, it didn't happen at Bad Blood, it happened at Raw a few days later. Sometimes for me, championship matches have to happen on our weekly shows. We've gone so long, it's probably only changed in maybe the last year or so, but we've gone so long, especially in WWE, where championship matches only happened on pay-per-views. You know what I mean? And if there was a championship match on TV, at no point were you thinking that championship was going to change hands in no way, shape, or form. Whereas now, if we're getting matches like this, well, more so the Gunther and Sami Zayn, I don't really see Aminata beating Mercedes, but to put a championship match on weekly TV, I think helps the weekly show. Not every match has to be on. Not every championship match has to be on the pay-per-view, but with the equation and how it's happened, it definitely feels as though it was a wasted opportunity. I think not even Aminata, but Statlander, it should have been Mercedes and Statlander. We had, as we said, 3 or 4 weeks where Mercedes was just chatting backstage. Statlander that whole interaction with Camille could have happened. That match could have happened. Beat Camille. Then she comes for Mercedes. It happens at Wrestle Dream.
And I would say also one of the differences with those scenarios is they didn't set up Gunther and Sammy at Bad Blood in a backstage interaction and then just put the title on the line. Then they set that up for weeks, you know, so we knew at some point it was happening, whether it was Bad Blood on Raw. Either way, the story had already been told.
Right.
There was no story here. And not just that, but she just defended her 2 titles on Title Tuesday, the only title match on Title Tuesday. And so to me, I'm just like, okay, so this isn't a lack of title defenses on television. This is, there's no story for you. And the Emi Sakura thing with the 2 titles, there was no story to that. You know, so it goes to what your point was, which is Mercedes Moné somehow is not fitting into the chemistry of AEW in the way that in the way that AEW is paying her. The way they're paying her and all the talk she made about we're going to revolutionize the women's division, it's not revolutionized at all. You know, unless, Now, this could be my fault. Seriously. Maybe I am misdefining a revolution. Perhaps the revolution is I come to the building and I don't work. That is maybe the revolution she's referencing. Because if I can come to the building and not work and still get paid, what's the problem? Apparently, there's no need to change or shift anything. You know, when everybody, isn't it funny to me that the woman who she beat for the TBS championship is on the pay-per-view, but she isn't?
Ooh.
And your idea, your revolution analogy there is fair, but in this case cannot be the answer because she brought a whole writer with her. So yeah, you came here to work and not to not be on TV. So yeah.
Very true. But given what Gerard said, I guess Mercedes is working smarter and not harder if she's getting paid to not do much.
I still want to figure out if there's some clause in her contract about how many dates she's supposed to work. That's the only thing that's making sense to me right now. That's the only reason why you can be in the building and not on a pay-per-view. Why fly her out? They weren't taping anything else there. It just does not make any sense that you flew this woman out. You paid for her hotel. You did whatever else you did for her to have a 2-minute backstage segment during a pay-per-view. That does not make sense to me. So maybe it's in her contract that because remember, she didn't work at Grand Slam, but she did press for Grand Slam. Like, this is supposed to be one of your big events and you didn't work it at all. So I'm just trying to understand, maybe there are in her contract, she only works X number of dates. It's the only thing that's making sense to me. Because if you're trying to be the face of the company, you're doing all this media, you should at least show up and work.
But surely these X number of dates, as you've seen in the past with other wrestlers, very recently, your Roman Reigns, your Brock Lesnar's, a few of the legends that have probably just shown up every now and again. These certain number of dates are at certain high-level pay-per-views.
And they're not you showing up to the pay-per-view and not work up.
Right.
Well, it could include weekly shows. I don't know.
Wow.
Who knows? Because they don't have house shows. So maybe it is, I work X number of dates. And I don't, it is. You know what I wish? I wish that, oh God, I shouldn't say this publicly. I wish that some company would feel the need to pay me such an exorbitant amount of money for me to do nothing. I wish. Yeah. I wish. And maybe that's where she's winning, because most people of our hue don't get that opportunity. So maybe that's where she's winning. Maybe that's where she's winning and I missed the boat. I should be applauding you, Mercedes, for being able to work less and still get that guaranteed check, because most of the rest of us can't do it.
He said, maybe I'm the idiot. Maybe
I'm the one trying to figure out, how do I work harder? She's like, no, watch me. I'm going to show up to work and just sit in the back and still collect my check.
Phenomenal. Interesting. Yeah.
That's why you're the CEO. Yeah, man. I got it wrong. I'm sorry.
Fair. Something that we've thrown into this show literally minutes before we came on, because we found out, or we saw that PWI's 250, the top 250 women in wrestling was published about an hour or 2 hours ago. Gerard, you made sure you had a quick skim through the numbers, through the names. Give us your feedback and everything and information from what you found out.
Well, for sure. So the PWI 250, it has evolved after 17 years. Last year was the first year it moved from 150 to 250 women, which is pretty awesome. I think the criteria are important for people to understand. So this was taken from the evaluation period of October the 1st, 2023 to September 30th, 2024. It looked at win-loss records, championships, tournament wins. You had to have a minimum of 10 singles matches total in this time period that were not tag team matches, or 6 such matches in separate months. So that's important when you understand some of the people that did not make the list, like the aforementioned Mercedes Moné, who is not on the list, even though she came back to full-time wrestling in March. Shout out to Tony Storm, who tops the list at number 1 this year. In terms of our black wrestlers, the highest ranked black wrestler, well, first of all, there are 2 black female wrestlers in the top 10. At number 8, it's Willow Nightingale, and that was the same position, ironically, she held last year. And then Athena, who I believe was number 6 last year, comes in at number 10, rounding out the top 10. From there, I know you guys in the UK will love this. Rio is at number 25 on this list, which is pretty impressive. Shout out to Kalani Jordan, who's at number 29 on this list. Naomi comes in at number 30 on this list, which I think is interesting. It kind of makes sense. October, she was still in TNA. She comes over in January. Man. Primarily, wrestled solo matches. Now, this is where things get interesting. Bianca Belair, number 34. And the reasoning behind this is that during this time, most of it, she's been a tag team wrestler, which I guess would hold true for the second half of the evaluation period, as her and Jade formed a team in April, went after the tag titles, and they've been primarily doing the tag thing. Speaking of Jade Cargill, she comes in at number 44 on this list, which is the lowest for both of these women. They have usually been a lot higher. Janai Kai comes in at number 37. Congratulations to Red Velvet, the current Ring of Honor Women's TV champion, number 51, her highest ranking yet. Same for Queen Aminata, who comes in at number 55. So I'm excited about this. This one was really interesting to me. Jada Parker comes in at number 90. And I just was like, wow. Wow. I am impressed. I did not expect Jada Parker this soon to come in this high. But she did. Nyla Rose is at 105. Sol Ruka is at 107. So Jada Parker higher than Sol Ruka. Very interesting conversation somewhere. Shout out to Maserati, the current All-Caribbean Women's champion, at number 136. Trish Adora comes in at 140, which I think is interesting. Layla Gray, who I think still fits in this category. If she doesn't, y'all will correct me. She's at 148. Mi Chin comes in at 173. Aaliyah James is at 177. Kiera Hogan at 179. Tasha Steeles at 181. Maya World comes in. She has shaken up the world recently. She's at 184. Nice. Kiana James, who we've not seen on our TV in quite some time, comes in at 205. Savannah Evans at 217. Jordan Blade at 227. Ruthie J at 230. Tiara James at 246. And Alexis Littlefoot at 248.
Wow. Nice.
Yeah. So shout out to them. One of the names that's missing that I'm just thinking to myself, okay, maybe we'll see them on the tag team list. We did not see Lash Legend on this list.
That's what I've been waiting for.
Very surprising to me. It's shocking
what's going on here
that she's not on this list. So yeah, I'm very surprised by that. I'm going to assume that maybe they were lumping her in with Jakara Jackson and Metaphor, and they'll have them on the tag team list. I imagine we'll see the King Bees on the tag team list when they do the tag team. They are going to, I think, rank pretty high. I think we'll see Bianca and Jade rank very high when they do the tag team list as well. But that's a look at the black wrestlers on the PWI 250.
This is all very interesting. So much to talk about. So much to kind of, pick at. The first thing I'm gonna go with is one, Lash Legend not being on there. it kind of does make some level of sense because, you know, similar to Jade and Bianca for the last few months.
Yes and no,
there's
though.
been a lot of no.
Remember, she was in that ladder match to determine the first ever North American Women's Champion. That was June. So I'm
but then what else has she done as a singles competitor? That's
it's
so there's something.
Tough.
The other part for me is Jada Parker, not taking anything away from her. So glad she's in there and all the rest of it. But Jada Parker above Sol Ruka, also above Lola Vice. I think Lola Vice was like the one underneath.
Yeah, Lola Vice was in there. Yeah, that's right.
I'm just wondering how that works because from what I remember, those two ladies, Lola Vice, Sol Ruka, have had more higher level matches in terms of stakes, the push, all that kind of thing. Can you make sense of Jada Parker being above Sol Ruka?
If we're talking perhaps mainstream impact for Jada, perhaps?
Possibly.
So Ruka's been injured. Remember, she's already kind of came back.
She was injured for a lot.
I think she was injured for a lot of that evaluation period.
Fair.
But even so, like I think, the cultural weight of NXT, the currency is high right now.
Yes, sort of big time. Big time.
I remember she had that moment that went World Star.
Jada.
Yeah.
Jada.
Yeah.
She's had a few moments that have gone World Star.
Yeah. So, she had at least 3 maybe. So one
I remember
was
the
just
first original one. So
it was just the thing where people noticed who she was, and then it was on World Star, and it was some big thing. Who's this?
Like her entrance
in
initially,
wrestling and blah blah.
Then they did the whole, the teardrop deal. That was another thing that was pretty big.
And then our match with Roxanne was a big thing as well. For those few weeks.
Sorry, the evaluation period starts when? In October?
October the 1st through September 30th of this year.
October 23.
Yeah.
Yeah, October 1st.
I'm just thinking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. When was it ends when?
September 30th of this year.
Look at that. So I'm just had words with Kevin, that I think is one of the head honchos over at PWI, and they said that they had prepared Mercedes write up for the magazine, thinking that she would have her 10th match at the pay-per-view.
Oh wow!
So I'm just on Cage Match. That's what I was counting on Cage Match. How many matches did she have in that period? 9.
Right.
9.
Jeez.
That's since she signed in March and she wrestled in May.
And imagine the position she would have if she had that 10th match.
She'd be probably top 10.
Easily top 10.
Easily top 10. 100%. Yeah.
Top 3 possibly.
Yeah.
Wow.
Ridiculous.
Wow.
9. Literally 9 on the dot. 10th could have been the paper.
Would have happened. Yeah.
Wow.
Interesting. Very, very interesting. I'm definitely going to take a little bit more of a look into that, and of course, as I usually do, post up as Gerard gave us the rundown just now. Post that up on my Instagram, of course. But it makes a very interesting reading. I'm very, very happy for Kalani Jordan.
Yes.
Being up there, and all the ladies from NXT, as we said, NXT just seems to hold a different level of stock right now, especially in that women's division. No other show promotion is giving the amount of time for women as NXT is. Right. Stories generally are great. As I said, they're getting a lot of time. Their matches are of top quality. Roxanne Perez, we could do a show just talking about Roxanne Perez and just what she's done, what she's doing at the moment. It's phenomenal.
She's number 11 on this list too.
That can be questioned too. That can be very much questioned.
Agreed.
Even Athena's position, I'm like, huh?
Given that Bailey was number 7 on this list.
Bailey number 7.
Bailey's number 7.
Yep.
Stephanie Vacour is number 5 on this list. It's interesting.
It's all very, very interesting.
Yeah.
It's all very interesting. I mean, I wouldn't argue number 1 and 2.
Yeah, I think 1 and 2 are fair.
I wouldn't
Tony's
argue number
1.
1
Who's
and
number
2.
2?
Jordan
Jordan
Grace.
Grace.
Okay, yeah, fair.
I would not argue number 1 and 2. The rest can be argued, but you know, these are the things that happen. I think, you know, sometimes these lists, and I'm very much a massive fan of PWI lists. I look at the criteria. Most of the time, I'm like, yeah, okay, I can't argue it. But I think sometimes as well, there are certain things within the criteria where it's hard to distinguish what's better than the other and all that kind of stuff. So, you know, positions are positions. Sometimes we just have to be grateful that people make it into the list.
Correct.
In general.
Correct.
You know what I mean? To have Willow and Athena in that top 10, from just to be able to say that is correct. Again, similar to when the PWI 500 came out and we were like, okay, Swerve's in there, but who else is in the top 10? There was no one else. But then we're thinking, but who else would you put in that top 10? There was no one else, to be honest. So all in all, it will make sense on a general level, but there are some nitpicks and little tidbits and whatnot that you can definitely argue. But it makes for good interaction.
Yeah, definitely. I said to Kevin, and I'm sure he won't mind me saying that you guys have come and done your little sprinkling of Stardom and Marigold talents all over this now again.
Of course.
But like he said to me, it's what those of us in the office that are voting, this is what we're watching. So
yeah, of course.
You know, it's our list. We can put it in there. I said, yeah, that's fine.
And
those are the names that the masses are going to see and be like, who? Or they don't deserve to be there, or whatever the case is.
Yeah, of course. And this is the other thing I was going to say. You know, it's based on the people who are also, you know, making the list. What did they see? What are they into? All that kind of stuff. It's similar to when, you know, we do our lists, or when we do you know, the Reigner ranking. Different people watch different things, and their input is going to be very different to the others, and that's part of the beauty of it as well. You know what I mean? That's part of why we might get certain people to contribute, because they see things differently.
Right.
Some of the stuff that we don't see ourselves, and their input is just as important as well. So it makes for very interesting discussion, interaction, and all the rest of it. But we'll see what it all makes, you know what I mean, how it makes sense going forward. Again, beautiful to see NXT ladies up there. To keep on that theme of the NXT ladies, it was phenomenal to see the visual that we saw last week on NXT when Kalani Jordan teamed with Jade and Bianca, picked up the win. All three ladies standing in the middle of the ring with championship gold in their hands. Gerard, how phenomenal was that to see, and how great is that for Kalani herself?
It's huge. It's a great moment. You know, we talked earlier in the year about the moment, the big point with Naomi and Jade and Bianca. And I don't know in my mind that I'd ever considered that this could happen again with an NXT talent. But to see that happen, and then to see even earlier that evening, those three in the ring with Jey Uso and Trick Williams, and they all have championships. And to just see these major championships and the popularity of all people of varying hues, who 15, 20 years ago, a picture like that would not have been possible. So I love that we saw that, we got to experience that, and that it's happening at NXT, which means we're going to see more of it on Raw and SmackDown over the coming years. So this is great that our kids and the kids of this generation, these are the images that they get to grow up with. It's not trying to pick one out of a promotion that, okay, that's the only Black person there. It's, I can choose, and these are champions, and they're great, and they're being heralded not just because they're Black, but because they're great. And I think that's huge.
And coming off the back of that, we then saw on Friday, Jakara Jackson, Lash Legend, team up together to take on Jade and Bianca in a match for the WWE Women's Tag Team Championships. The first time We saw all black females challenging for one title, for that title. Mex, how great was it? How did you see that match on SmackDown itself? We've also seen that Jakara and Lash were on Raw as well, overseeing JD Bianca's match against Io Sky and
Kairi Sane.
How important is it for Jakara and Lash to get that exposure?
Yeah, I thought, to be completely honest, all 2 minutes of it, that's my one gripe that, I feel they built this match to some degree, should have got longer. But I genuinely think that is the best outing I have seen from those two. It's like they knew the stage that they were on. Like this was really, go hard or go home kind of thing. And I generally feel that's the best tag team outing they have had. I think they did everything they could within that 2 minutes to make themselves look strong, look smart, still heelish. Obviously, these guys got their win, and it was a 2 minute match just because of timings and stuff of the 2 hour show. But ultimately, there's obviously a conversation where you would say the more experienced talents should win quickly over NXT people or whatever the case is. But I just thought they looked great doing it. In the 2 minutes they had, they looked conniving, they looked strong, they looked quick, their tag team moves were down and stuff like that. I guess so much so, which led me to a video I made on my Instagram. That
I was going to ask about that.
Is Lash, who I think is a better comparison after watching them two in the ring together compared to Jade. I actually think that Lash is maybe ahead of Jade in terms of just wrestling ability. Like, I think Jade obviously is Jade Cargill. At this point, we know where her star is heading, sort of thing. Right. And all of this wrestling stuff is just like a byproduct to further future greatness. But Lash Legend is kind of what I think people thought we could mold Jade Cargill into. And of course, she's still a work in progress, but she's strong, she's athletic, she's doing now all the right things, because I'm not pulling wool over anyone's eyes. I think we all remember the original 2.0 Lash Legend, and that stuff didn't necessarily work. She seemingly went off TV for a while. They worked on stuff, brought her back. And from even I remember in the Otis spot that she done and all of that stuff, like I really think Lash Legend is what we thought we were getting with Jade Cargill, and still on the rise. And yeah, it's interesting to see what you guys think in terms of two people that probably started. Maybe Jade had 18 months on Lash in terms of a start into wrestling. Something like that. And yeah, just how both of their careers have kind of turned out. Obviously, one had the intense training of the PC, whereas another was probably left to her own devices a bit more. But yeah, what do you guys think?
Gerard?
I think that's an astute observation. It was a very interesting visual when Lash got into the ring and you saw her standing against a Jade or standing against a Bianca, and you go, oh, Lash is a problem. Like, it in NXT, but you're used to seeing her stand against the NXT people. To see her stand against a Bianca and Jade, you just went, oh, she's a real problem here. And I think you raise a great point. I had never considered it, but she is arguably more Jade than Jade, right? Like that's we expected that kind of powerhouse, dominant, and not in the, I don't want to use that name. I have to use a different name. Not in just this, I throw everybody around and can't take anything kind of thing. I think she being Lash does a great job of showing her dominance, but then also showing how to take a move as well. And she can take a move well, make it look believable, then mount a comeback that makes a lot of sense. And so that, I think, to your point, is a direct reflection of all of that time spent in the PC. and how it makes a difference on that large scale instead of just being thrown out there. But at some point, it feels like we're going to have to see those two one-on-one at some point, and that's going to be must-see TV.
It's interesting because, as you mentioned, Mix, you know, at one point, Lash was doing her thing and it just wasn't working for anyone. You know, it was a little bit sloppy in the ring. The promos kind of felt too overdone. I mean, we were in the NXT 2.0 era, so everybody's promos felt overly done anyway. But she disappeared for a while, came back. You know, she won. Did she win it? Did she win the what was that longed out challenge thing that they all did?
The Combine.
No, not the Combine. It was
no.
a match.
You're talking about the Iron Survivor.
That's
Iron Survivor.
the one.
Yeah,
Okay.
she came close. She came
showed
close
out
because
she
she had like 2
showed
falls
out
in that one. Yeah,
yeah. She definitely showed out in that match as well, which made people stand up. And after, you know, for a few weeks, she was kind of like, you know, one of the focuses in the women's division for a while. We had the little thing with Trick. And then it kind of, you know, she kind of stepped back a little bit, I guess, in terms of, you know, appearances on TV or definitely in the in-ring competition. But we could see that she had improved on a massive scale. In comparison to Jade, where, you know, she accomplished what she accomplished in AEW, signed with WWE. It was big news on all levels of news and entertainment. And then everyone was just waiting for this, you know, waiting for this debut. Even Triple H mentioned wherever she was taught was just wrong. So they, you know, they held her back.
Yeah.
Did whatever training they feel they needed to do. And then she's eventually made a debut on in the Royal Rumble match. Showed out. Didn't have to do much. Did enough. But then it was still, you know, everyone was still waiting for what she could do in the ring and whether she had improved and all of these things. And it's obvious that she's improved, but the improvement isn't wow. It's not a wow type of improvement. It's just kind of like, okay, she's improved. And we're all still saying she'll get there. We're still in that space of where we're saying she'll get there, she'll get there. She's been paired with Bianca Belair in order to help her get there. And I feel as though, you know, when I first saw your video mix, and the first thing in my head was, nah, there's no way Lash Legend ain't better than Jade. Are you mad? When I think about it, I'm like, you know what? Actually, in terms of both of them having to take a step back, go through their training, do whatever they need to do in the background, and come back, I can definitely see a much larger improvement from Lash than Jade, for sure. If we're comparing, you know, just in terms of ticking boxes, in terms of wrestling in general, Jade is still so far ahead, but it's a lot more to do with her star power, her look, her presence, all of that kind of stuff. Lash just does, all of that. Lash doesn't have that yet. It's not there yet. But in terms of in-ring and development and the percentage or the level of improvement, Lash has definitely made much more of improvement over that space of time than Jade has. So it's interesting to see them in the ring. We didn't see a clash between them one-on-one necessarily. If we see that, it's going to be interesting. And there's still a chance for us to see that because, as I said, Lash and Jakara was still kind of hanging around on Raw, even after they lost on SmackDown. So it's still possible. When and how that happens, I don't know. Does that happen on another one of the main shows? Do Jade and Bianca come back to NXT again? I don't know which one it has to be, but whenever we do, I'm hoping it's going to be, you know, a longer match, a match that feels a little bit more important, and we'll get to see what they do. There was a question with all this happening with those two ladies, Lash and Jakara. Someone asking, could they be moving to the main roster? What do you guys think of that? Lash and Jakara moving to the main roster in, you know, maybe in the next, if it happened in the next maybe couple of weeks or whatever else, do you think that's something that would be good for them, or should they stay on NXT a little bit longer?
I think I would keep them on NXT, you know, just for at least a little bit longer. Even with them still being in and around this picture, I don't mind it. Like I don't mind a situation where, say, they have a championship match in NXT with Bianca and Jade, and maybe a returning Noam Dar cheats and helps them win the titles or something like that. Like that could be a kind of way to do it and protect Bianca and Jade. Just right now, where Raw is down to 2 hours, SmackDown is 2 hours. Like I don't think necessarily the women, a bit of a better showing this week than last week for the women on Raw. But I just don't think there's a lot of spaces. And as I watched Raw again this week, I'm thinking you guys are struggling to adapt to this 2 hours, which makes sense. But it still doesn't feel like the show is all kind of, one cohesive thing right now. So just because of these kind of more administrative changes, I would leave them where they are for now. And they just started this kind of new era of NXT. Let's bring the NXT, those titles, the tag titles down to the women in NXT and let them go on a little tour of NXT with all the flourishing teams and friendships. There may not be a lot of teams, but there's a lot of friendships and, amongst the women's division. So they could do some stuff there, definitely. And I think more so, I think the plan was to try to elevate Noam Dar up the card before he got injured. So even if he was to start coming back, Mensah as well, he's been there getting more and more involved these days. Let's kind of use this opportunity to put Metaphor back together and do some stuff with them.
Gerard?
I actually liked seeing them on the main roster. I wasn't sure of how I would feel. I loved the idea last Tuesday when they said, hey, if you're going to do this, you have to come to where we are. You got to come to SmackDown. Seeing them on Raw last night, I was like, oh, they fit here. They fit here. I think, certainly on Raw and on SmackDown as well, there's a need for more women's tag teams. And I think, they serve coming in as a great tag team. I think that would be a great opportunity for them, getting a chance to kind of work up the ranks. But I think their presence was one that said, oh, you guys can fit here. They didn't seem out of place to me. And so I think if anything, it was a good feeler to see, does this make sense or do they feel like fish out of water? And the fact that they put their hands on Damage Control says, oh no, we're going to be seeing them. And I think it's just a matter of time at this point. It also makes me wonder what's the prognosis for Noam Dar. Is he going to be out so long where it just makes sense to go ahead and elevate them in terms of Metaphor and then let him, get in where he fits in whenever he comes back? Because when he comes back, he doesn't have to come back to NXT. He's Noam Dar. He can come and be on the main roster and he'd be fine. So I think it's going to be one of those types of things to look at, but I think they look ready. They look ready.
Yeah.
I did think, now that they started calling them Meta Girls,
I was going to say,
okay, maybe you guys are kind of testing this out, sort of thing.
Literally what I was going to say. They were coined the Meta Girls. I don't think we've heard that on NXT necessarily. No. Especially not as a group. So they're definitely testing the waters, and I think it would be a great way if they did it this way, in a similar way that they did with Carmelo before he actually got drafted, where we saw him every now and again. We saw him often. We kind of knew who he was when he come onto the main roster. They made a bit of a, not necessarily a big thing, but kind of still made him relevant. Told us who he was and all that kind of stuff when he was in, tournaments or whatnot as well. I think it would work for them to every now and again show up, maybe have a bit of a feud, maybe the Unholy Union, Damage Control, kind of be in and around the scene, but not necessarily, officially be moved up to the main roster. I don't think that needs to happen, but just for this to happen, because you see the likes of Fallon Henley and that group there, and some of the other ladies down in NXT who haven't been given that chance yet. To be on the main roster, to have a match on the main roster. We've seen Sol Ruka. I think Sol Ruka's been on main event a couple of weeks in a row. But again, unless you pay attention, you're not going to know that she was there. So it's a massive chance for them, and a great opportunity. We've got one last little few minutes to talk about this one last thing that I want to talk about, and especially when we're talking about people moving to main roster. Obafemi is no longer the North American champion.
And there's that.
I told you guys. I smelled
I mean,
it.
I didn't want it to happen.
I felt it was going to
yeah.
happen. I felt it was going to happen, and I'm upset that it was done the way it was, or to who it was. Let me be very clear, to who it was. I can't lie, but it was built correctly. It was done, in terms of storyline and all the rest of it, emotions and whatnot. It was done correctly, but I still feel as though Tony D'Angelo just isn't enough of a formidable opponent. But anyway, we are where we are. Mm-hmm. What happens now for Obafemi? Does he go and make his presence known in the NXT Championship scene, or do we see him move possibly towards main roster?
I think we have to remember that it's still just been barely a year for Obafemi. Yep. Right? Like his presence is one where it looks like he's been here for 10 years, but it's only been a year. So I think there's still some things for him to learn. But the fact that he's carried the North American Championship in the way that he has, the dominant presence that he has, I feel like it's only a matter of time before he finds himself on Raw or SmackDown. But if you're going to put him around that title picture, the main title picture, we got a conversation to be had, because I think him being that guy is going to create a real problem for Trick Williams. A real problem. And I know a lot of people right now are talking about, Trick Williams, his footwork, what he does in the ring, being more charismatic than he is in ring. If they let Obafemi loose on Trick Williams, I don't see how Trick beats Oba. I just don't. So for me, and Obafemi is a very believable front man for the NXT Championship. Very believable.
Max.
That's it right there. You don't do it. You do not do it. I'm not saying you send him to the main roster, because again, he has had a amazing rookie year, if you want to call it that, from 4 matches to winning the North American title to then just dominating that title for as long as he has at this point. But there are still things to learn. There are still kind of other roles and things he can do to develop further. Maybe that development isn't in the WWE, isn't in NXT right now. You've got partners, you've got TNA, you've got Noah. You can send him over to. Maybe give him a short stint. Those guys were very high on the likes of, oh my God, what's that guy's name that's not even in? They don't even use anymore.
Oh, Omos.
Yeah, Muto spoke very highly of wanting to, use Omos over there in Japan. And, I'm not saying swap a black for a black, but Obafemi can ultimately, more talented, can do some stuff over there and learn a lot over there. Even if you send him to Impact to shake up things in Impact, very believable, because like Gerard rightly said, if they move him to the world title picture or the NXT title picture, it is a long day for Trick Williams. Very long. And then at the same time, you do have a talent and a star in Trick Williams. You don't want to be messing him around with, short title stints here and there sort of thing. Right. So yeah, maybe the best thing is let Obafemi lick his wounds, be angry on NXT, beat up the mid card as he, maybe tries to get back to his title, can't do it just because they're promoting and pushing other people, giving Tony D a bit of a run. Send him outside the company. You've got that luxury right now. And then maybe when the time is right, you bring him back to the NXT title picture. But it's a good problem to have.
It is.
If I were Shawn Michaels, if this were maybe a month or 2 ago, I would have had Obafemi probably lose his North American Championship before. I mean, it's great that he got the record, of course. That's a brilliant thing. But if I were to choose who my main guy was going into this whole CW thing, it would have been Obafemi by a mile. And if not Obafemi, Trick Williams isn't a bad choice, but I think they probably done it a little bit too early with Obafemi losing a title. I think it probably should have been another maybe month, 2 months, maybe into this whole CW thing. And then we kind of establish him as like, you know, the dominant guy. Maybe, you know, is he a heel? Is he a face? I don't even know. But anyway, he's a scary guy. And push that a little bit more. Then he loses at some point. Trick's had the title for a few weeks, few months maybe, and then Obafemi comes in. Because I struggle to see an NXT with Obafemi not holding a title. Like it's difficult for me to envision that, because there aren't many people he can feud with where a title's not involved. Right. If Dijak was still about, maybe. If Dragunov was still about, maybe. But at the moment, when I look at what on the NXT, you know, the men's division NXT, if Obafemi's not going for a title, I kind of almost fear that there's no point in not him not being there, but what is there for him to do? How does he hold his stature, his relevance, all the rest of it, if he's not going after a title or doesn't hold a title in his hand? So I think time is short for Trick in my head. Time short for Trick.
You would probably send him away is the best option.
Possibly.
Or to us are watching other products and keeping up with it. But yeah, you have him there becoming stale, devaluing himself, just being involved in just stuff just to keep him busy. I think NXT done it the right way. I think we pretty much all saw from a mile away that Trick win on the debut of CW and stuff like that.
Of course.
You called it months ago. But it's almost like AEW launched the company or launched TV in the company with Chris Jericho, the name that everybody knows and stuff like that. And that was Trick Williams, you know, the name that everyone can kind of get behind, that he's got the energy of NXT right now. But you had a Moxley waiting in the wings, that this guy was just always going to work his way to the top and become who we see he is today for AEW. And I think that's the role Obafemi plays now. Like, Trick Williams can be there. He can be the kind of marauding baby face and get the crowd going and all of that. But in the back, whether it's on NXT TV and maybe in some other places, Obafemi is just churning away in the lab, just getting ready for his day in the sun. And he's going to come and topple Trick. And then we are back to, you know, under the ruler, as he calls himself, sort of thing. And I think that's where you go and give him a dominant run. He's not going to need a lot longer before he's, you know, main roster ready.
Right.
And then even then, he's main roster's problem, because you know, how do you keep him away from the world title and all that kind of stuff? Like even the likes of Bron Breakker, he's being talked about in those circles already.
Yeah, of course.
So great problems to have. It's just all about now keeping that name value. Don't involve them in too much nonsense, that irrelevant nonsense that will just, you know, make people lose interest. Like they've got the job of kind of keeping Obafemi busy now, so we'll see how they do.
And that's the scary part, because at one point Bron Breakker was in that position.
Right.
He was in that position where he kind of almost became irrelevant, or we didn't care about him so much, or we didn't feel as though, you know, we weren't following him as much in NXT. I mean, you know, we are where we are now, and he's made his way back up there, of course. But
they never had the partnerships there, though. So now they have these opportunities to do these things. It'll be silly of them to sleep on it. Like
I think that is the only real answer, or the safest answer, definitely, in terms of what they do with Obafemi next. We see that Wesley's already kind of, you know, made his presence felt in terms of a challenger for Trick Williams as well. So that could be that's very much on the cards. We'll see what happens on today's show. But you know, I've never been a fan of people being thrown up to the main roster, but out of everyone that I've seen in NXT over the last 3 or 4 years, that guy, I would not be upset if he turned up on Raw or SmackDown next week. I wouldn't be upset, and I wouldn't be worried for him. As I said, as much as in NXT, I can't see him without or chasing the championship. At least on the main roster, there are more than enough people that he could feud with in order to build him towards something like that. I don't think it would be to his detriment at all. But we'll see what happens. I don't think they have to push him to the main roster. But if they decided to, I wouldn't be upset. But yeah, it's going to be intriguing and interesting to see what Obafemi does from here. We've never known him to chase anything.
Right.
Apart from he won the tournament. The next week he was North American champion.
Right.
Literally.
Right.
So yeah, we've never known him without a title. So yeah, we'll see what happens from here. Anyway, time is spent. You have been watching WrstlXtra on the WrestleMania UK YouTube channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe to see us every single week, and to also see when this guy puts out all of his reactions to WWE, AEW, everything else in between, and of course, all of his exclusive interviews as well. You can find him on WrestleMania.uk, on Instagram, WrestleMania.uk, on X. Also, find him with The Mandem on the Wrestling's YouTube channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe. See their show every single week. And of course, audio content in between. You can find Mex on Gorilla Position as well. WWE GP on Instagram. Of course, you can find this guy, just say his name, he will appear. But you can also find him on All Things Bonafide, as well as his own show, The Faction Show. You can also find him on WWT Live every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And you can also see him doing all of his commentary, broadcast, and everything else in between for Arche Wrestling, IWE, Southern Honor Wrestling, Nightmare Factory, All Caribbean Wrestling, Turnbuckle Championship Wrestling, and everything else I didn't mention, but I'm sure I've got them all right.
Yeah, you did.
You can find me in one place. The only place that you need to see me is Black Wrestling Alliance on Instagram. And until next week, see you guys again. Peace.